This video covers installation of a Strutmasters front suspension conversion for 2005 to 2011 Cadillac STS 4 models, and those vehicles are equipped with all-wheel drive. Our first step, we're going to go underneath the hood and remove the plastic covers that are on each side of the engine. This is going to give us access to the strut mounting bolts so we can get started with their removal. Our technician is showing you where the strut bolts are located and where the electronic connection is at. And our next step is going to be to disconnect the electronics from the top of the strut that you're working on. You'll find the clip and the connector, push it in, and it'll come right off. Next, we're going to use an 18mm socket to loosen the top strut mounting bolts. As you can see, our technician is going to remove all but one of the bolts. He's going to leave that final bolt in place until the strut is ready to be completely removed from the vehicle. You'll want to hang on to all these bolts in a secure location, and we'll reuse them later once we mount the new Strutmasters unit. As you can see, we left that one bolt to hold it in place, and now we're going to safely raise the vehicle to a good working height using an approved lifting device. And once it's secure, you're going to remove the front wheel on the side of the vehicle that you're working on. On this vehicle, the upper control arm is attached to a strut. And we're going to use a 5mm hex head wrench and an 18mm wrench to begin the removal process. As you'll see, our technician is going to loosen the bolt but not remove it just yet. With a few taps of the hammer on the side of the knuckle to break it loose, now he can safely remove the nut. We're going to put that nut back on the upper control arm and hang on to it to reuse later. Our next step will be to place a small jack or an underhoist stand underneath the front hub for support. As always, Strutmasters urges you to take all safety precautions when raising or jacking up the vehicle. Next, we're going to locate the ride height sensor and use a small flat screwdriver to carefully pry the ball from the socket. Or you can use a small pry bar just like our technician did in the picture, and just let it simply hang out of your way. Now it's time to loosen the nut at the bottom of the strut. And once you're finished with that, it'll be time to remove the pinch bolt at the top of the yoke using a 15mm wrench and an 18mm wrench. Once the pinch bolt is out, you can safely remove the yoke. You want to make sure to save the pinch bolt and the yoke. We'll need them for reinstalling the Strutmasters unit in a few minutes. Now that the yoke has been removed, we're going to go back up top and remove the final strut bolt. If you have an extra set of hands available, they come in handy, no pun intended. They can hold the bottom of the strut as you remove the final bolt. Gently guide the strut assembly out and away from the vehicle. As we mentioned earlier, the yoke and the upper A-arm should be saved because we're going to reuse them when we're installing the new Strutmasters unit. While you've got these parts removed, this will be an excellent time to check all of these parts and the ball joints for excessive wear and replace any of them as needed. With an 18mm wrench, we're now going to remove the electronic adapter bolt at the center of the strut. Now we're going to use an approved spring compressing device, and we're going to take some of the tension off the coil spring so we can remove the center nut and washer assembly. Strutmasters urges you to take all safety precautions when using any spring compressing device. They can be dangerous if not used properly. Be sure to like Strutmasters on Facebook for all the latest news and information, and see what we're cooking up next. Once the coil spring is compressed, you're going to use an 18mm socket to remove the upper nut, the washer, and the rubber isolator. Be sure to save the rubber isolator and the black cup washer and the center nut. We're going to need those again in a few minutes. Once you've removed the upper mount and A-arm, you can loosen the portable spring compressors and put them to the side, as we'll be using them again shortly. Strutmasters is proud to offer products for the entire lineup of Cadillacs. Now we're ready to prepare the new Strutmasters unit for installation by removing the top nut and just one of the washers. It's really important to leave the other washer in place. Next, we'll position the spring compressor onto the new Strutmasters coil spring and compress the spring just enough to install the rubber isolator. Again, we urge you to use great caution and follow all safety procedures when using the spring compressor. When installing the rubber isolator, make sure it's clocked correctly. Now you'll place the upper control arm and the upper mount assembly on top of the new coil spring and strut. The clocking or direction it's facing will not matter. Next, you're going to install the black cone-shaped washer, followed by the small, shiny, flat washer and the mounting bolt. Once the center bolt has been completely tightened, you can safely remove the spring compressors. Now we're ready to insert the strut into position on the vehicle. Watch as our technician gets it lined up. He'll get one bolt in place to hold it in, and then once it's in place, we'll insert and tighten the other four. Again, just like it was earlier when we removed the strut, if you have an extra set of hands around, it would be good to have them to help you get that first bolt in place. Strutmasters prides itself in suspension conversion systems that are bolt off, bolt on. If you encounter any difficulty installing your suspension conversion kit, follow the instructions carefully, and if you still need help, give us a call on our customer support and tech line at 866-998-8737, and we'll be glad to walk you through it. Now we can proceed to fasten the yoke to the bottom of the strut and the lower control arm. Watch as our technician slides it back in place. You'll want to be finding those 15mm and 18mm wrenches that you used earlier, and we're going to need those to tighten the pinch bolt in just a moment. We're going to put our lower strut mounting bolt and hand tighten it back in place. Then, thank goodness for impact wrenches, we'll get her fully tightened down. Okay, we're ready to reconnect the upper control arm and rod height sensor. You'll need that 5mm hex head wrench and 18mm wrench to tighten the upper control arm. And right next door, this will be a good time to put the rod height sensor back in place. It's a ball and socket device, and it just snaps right back in. Now we're ready to finish tightening the bolt that attaches the bottom yoke to the strut. Once we're all tightened up, you can reinstall the front wheel and safely lower the vehicle to the ground. Once the vehicle's on the ground, we recommend retightening the upper strut mounting bolts with the weight of the vehicle now on the new strut assembly. Now you're ready to put to use the electronic device provided by Strutmasters to eliminate the suspension warning light. As you can see, our technician just simply snaps it in place and uses a zip tie to secure it and move it out of the way. This will help fool the vehicle into thinking that all the electronic suspension is working okay, thus eliminating the suspension warning light. Once that operation is finished, you can simply put the plastic cover back on that side of the vehicle and secure it. Call our tech support line for help at 866-998-8737. Keep in mind, these vehicles are equipped with air shocks and have an onboard air compressor for the rear suspension on the vehicle, and that portion may be malfunctioning. Okay, when the job is done, we recommend using a torque wrench and tightening the lug nuts per the guidelines found in your vehicle's owner's manual. And when you're completely done, Strutmasters recommends a 4-wheel alignment after every conversion kit is installed. This ensures the best performance and optimum tire wear.